I bought a car named Smokey, and before anyone thinks that was some cool nickname like it was fast, mysterious, or had a dark backstory, no. I named it Smokey because the first time I drove it, actual smoke came out of it. To be fair, I did not plan on buying a manual car. I was just looking for a cheap car that could get me from point A to point B without making point C the repair shop. But then I saw this car online, and it looked clean, affordable, and suspiciously available. The only problem was, it was manual. And I had never properly driven a manual car before. But like many confident people with no evidence to support their confidence, I told myself, how hard can it be? It is just one extra pedal. That sentence should be printed on my financial records as the beginning of the disaster, because apparently that one extra pedal is not just a pedal. It is a judgment device. It knows when you are scared, and it punishes you immediately. I messaged the seller and acted completely normal. I asked the usual questions. Does it run? Any issues? Clean title? Then I asked, very casually, if it was easy to drive. He said, yeah, once you get used to it. I should have heard danger music right there. Because once you get used to it can mean anything. It can mean 2 minutes. It can mean 6 months. It can mean your left leg will file a complaint against you. When I showed up to see the car, I tried to look like someone who knew cars. I walked around it slowly, nodded at random parts, looked at the tires, and made a face like I understood things. I even looked under the hood like the engine was going to whisper secrets to me. The seller was standing there watching me inspect the car, and I could feel myself becoming more fake by the second. I tapped one of the panels and said, "Nice." I do not know why I said that. It was metal. Of course it made a sound. Then came the moment I was trying to avoid. The seller handed me the keys and said, "You want to take it for a test drive?" And my soul immediately left my body, looked back at me, and said, "Good luck." I said yes, because what else was I supposed to say? No, I prefer to buy cars based on vibes. So I got in, sat down, and stared at the 3 pedals like I had just opened a math test in a language I did not speak. The seller got in the passenger seat, which made everything worse. It is one thing to embarrass yourself alone. It is another thing to embarrass yourself next to the person who owns the thing you are currently damaging. I pressed the clutch, started the car, and immediately felt proud. The engine turned on. That was my first victory. For about 3 seconds, I thought maybe I was gifted. Maybe manual driving was hidden in my bloodline. Then I tried to move. The car jumped forward like it had been scared awake. I panicked, pressed random things with my feet, and the engine shut off. The seller did that polite laugh people do when they are concerned. He said, "Just give it a little gas." I nodded like he had given me ancient wisdom. Just a little gas. Easy. Unfortunately, my foot heard, launched this vehicle into another dimension. I tried again. This time, the engine screamed, the car barely moved, and I could smell something. Not a normal car smell. Not gasoline, not old interior. This was a smell with consequences. It smelled like a toaster had given up on life. It smelled like a burnt sandwich wearing a seatbelt. It smelled like my bank account quietly closing its eyes and accepting fate. The seller looked forward. I looked forward. Neither of us said anything. The car was moving, technically, but it was moving with the energy of someone being forced to attend a family event. I made it down the street, and every stop sign became a boss fight. Every time I had to stop, I knew I had to start again. And every time I started again, the clutch lost another year of its life. At one point, a car pulled up behind me, and that changed everything. Suddenly, I was not just learning manual. I was performing live. I could feel the driver behind me judging my entire bloodline through the windshield. The light turned green. I stalled. The car behind me waited. I started it again. I stalled again. Somewhere in the distance, I heard a horn, and I chose to believe it was not for me, even though it absolutely was. The seller said, "Take your time." That was nice of him, but also impossible. Because when someone says, "Take your time," while you are blocking traffic, time becomes the one thing you definitely do not have. I finally got the car moving, but now the smell was stronger. Then I saw it. A little smoke. Not a dramatic movie explosion, but enough smoke to make the car look like it was trying to send a message. I looked at the seller. He looked at the smoke. I looked back at the road like if I ignored it, maybe physics would also ignore it. The car kept going, but it smelled like regret with heated seats. We drove back mostly in silence. Not peaceful silence. The kind of silence where both people know something happened, but nobody wants to be the first person to describe the damage. When we parked, I turned off the engine and sat there for a second. The smoke was still doing its little goodbye dance. The smell was floating around us like a witness in court. The seller got out and walked around the car. I got out too, trying to look calm, like this was all part of my inspection process. Yes, I always test the smoke feature before making a purchase. In my head, I was calculating my options. Option 1, walk away and pretend I never existed. Option 2, apologize and offer to pay for the clutch. Option 3, buy the car, because I had already spiritually adopted the damage. The problem was, I knew I burned the clutch. I did not know how badly, but I knew enough. And when you break something during a test drive, it becomes very hard to negotiate. So I stood there, smelling burnt clutch, looking at this car that had just humbled me in public. And somehow I said the words, "So what is the lowest you will take?" The seller paused. I think he respected the boldness. Or maybe he was just trying to process the fact that I had damaged his car and immediately started bargaining. Either way, we made a deal. That is how I bought Smokey. Not because it was perfect, not because I fell in love at first sight. I bought it because I took it for a test drive, made it smell like a barbecue accident, and felt morally trapped. Driving it home was a whole separate adventure. I treated every stop sign like a final exam. I avoided hills like they owed me money. If the GPS said turn onto a steep road, I simply decided the GPS was being negative. By the time I got home, my left leg was shaking. The car smelled suspicious, and I had aged emotionally. But I was proud. Not because I drove well. I did not. I was proud because we both survived. That night, I sat outside looking at the car and realized it needed a name. Something meaningful. Something honest. Something that honored our first memory together. So I named it Smokey. And honestly, Smokey taught me a lot. It taught me patience. It taught me humility. It taught me that confidence is not the same thing as skill. Most importantly, it taught me that the clutch pedal is not a suggestion. Now, whenever someone says they want to learn manual, I support them. I really do. I just tell them one thing. Learn in someone else's car first, preferably far away from traffic, hills, witnesses, and your wallet. Because buying your first manual car is exciting. But buying your first manual car because you already burned the clutch during the test drive, that is not a purchase. That is a rescue mission with paperwork.